right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tapped In. It's another episode here today. I'm joined with Ayub and Sino. And we have a very special guest with us today, someone that I hold close to my heart for many reasons. Someone who's doing very impactful work in our communities and for our communities. But without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Andrea Davidson.
Welcome.
So, Andrea, it's a pleasure to have you here. And before we get into some of the deeper questions, I will begin by asking, obviously you've been at the forefront of some pretty, heavy moments recently. So, how are you feeling and how are you holding up? And yeah.
Thanks for asking, Zaid. I'm holding up really well. I'm really excited, I think, being able to start something so new and with so much potential, and that's really community driven for me. I'm feeling like I've got a lot of energy. I'm feeling really inspired.
Nice.
Really busy, but really happy in my work.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't, for those of us who don't know, your background and what you're doing currently, could you give us a bit of a breakdown on, how you got to this current position and what you do and where it all started for you?
Yeah. So, look, where it all started for me was, I always say I'm a youth worker at heart. And that's because that's where the journey started for me. When I finished school, I went off and did some volunteer work for about 12 months as a youth worker over in the UK, actually. And that, for me, just changed everything. Like, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then came back, and my career has kind of moved around all over the place. When I was going through uni, I started working in youth justice, and then I'm like, okay, not only do I know I want to be a youth worker, but that is where I want to work.
Nice.
And, went on, did studies, did casework, moved all over the place, went up to Queensland, went and worked in remote Aboriginal communities, did a lot of really community-led work up there that was incredible, and then came back down to New South Wales and again got back into youth justice, and for the first time really worked in trying to shape systems rather than just working at the coal front. And when I say just, both those things are so important, right? And I always missed working at the coal front, so then I had an opportunity when I came down to Melbourne to, for the first time, run a custodial facility. It was actually the first time I worked in a custodial facility at Parkville. And it was after Parkville had a really rough time, a really hard time. And so that I learnt so much from that experience. It really shaped me. And then from there, moved into the Commissioner for Youth Justice role. Did that role, loved that role, absolutely loved that role. Thought that was it for me. Like that was the role I was going to stay in.
Yeah.
But then this opportunity came up, and for me, this opportunity is about really being able to shift the dial on the focus being earlier to stop young people coming into places like Parkville by getting things right way earlier. So moving the attention upstream, if you like, and really working in a prevention space to be able to give young people the opportunity to thrive before they hit justice systems. Yeah.
Nice. And what did you see that made you feel like, or realize that we are intervening a bit too late?
So one of the things that's always really stuck with me when I've got to learn the journeys of young people is there's always these signs that young people know themselves. Every story, people are able to say, like, this is the point where the wheels started falling off for me.
Yeah.
But it's often like years later that they actually, then people are really pushing the help on them that they think they need.
Right.
And so this really is through the stories of young people and understanding that help needs to come way earlier, and actually that, the troubled behaviours and what people experience that turns up in justice systems, it doesn't start there, it starts somewhere else, and we need to work on where it starts to be able to support people in that moment to stop them having to get into those systems in the first place. Because it becomes way harder to turn things around once you get further down the track. Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that, finding yourself in a troubled time or in a troubled situation. I think that you would appreciate having some of those intervention things, at an earlier time in your life. And, who knows to say that some of those things might have prevented a lot of paths that we might have walked down, speaking for myself for sure, you know what I mean? So that's why I've got a thing.
Andrea, when you say way earlier, based on your experience, around what time is that for a young person?
I think it's different for every young person. Like every story is unique, but there's some really common things that I've seen, particularly at school. So that transition between primary school and high school, that's a really big one. I think people often think, the troubles start or the wheels start to fall off once young people stop attending school. But actually, I think it's even earlier than that.
Yep.
So that transition between primary school and high school, when you go from being the big fish in a small pond at primary school to being in a big high school. And also, like, the attention and the relationships that you have in high school are so much different to primary school. Where we are in our own minds, like our psychology changes at that age too. So for me, that point between primary school and high school is a really important one. But then also I think it can even go way earlier than that. So, I think some young people and some families have a really tough time even before a young person's born. So I think sometimes the help needs to come even that way earlier. And that's what I really love about the work that I'm doing at the moment about a public health approach, is it's actually about saying, let's look at the whole life course and actually think about everything that we can do to prevent young people from coming into the justice system. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And just for those who don't know, so the VIU model obviously was rolled out overseas and had a pretty significant effect in community in terms of, the bettering of lives and bettering of outcomes, so to speak. And I also understand you've recently had the chance to take a trip out into the UK and just to see, what it's like and how things work. So my next question to ask was, how was your time there, and how was the visit, and what stood out to you from that trip, after returning?
Wow, that trip was such an eye-opener. It was like stepping into a time machine and going, if we get this right, then this is where we can be in 10, 20 years' time, hopefully even sooner. But the reason I say 10, 20 years' time is the VIU model is based on a model that really worked. The first place that rolled it out was in Scotland, and that was like 20 years ago. And at that time, like, Scotland was in a really difficult position, and particularly Glasgow as a city. Similar to Melbourne, everyone was talking about crime. Everyone was really focused on youth crime, on knife crime, and it was a huge challenge for them. And they had really taken enforcement, so that enforcement approach that intuitively sometimes people think, we just need more enforcement, but they had taken it as far as it could go, and they knew they needed to do something different. So being able to then see that different thing that they did, which was the violence reduction unit model, taking a public health approach rather than just a pure justice approach to violence, within 10 years, that turned that whole situation around. Within 20 years, Scotland is in a position where they don't have young people in custody. Like, they literally don't have young people in custody.
Wow.
So the power of that model, being able to, it just gave me such hope. And it's not that everything's perfect there, but the way that people think about what needs to happen to change, what needs to happen to support people to thrive, it's just a completely different landscape over there. So that was an incredible trip for that reason, particularly seeing Scotland. And then going somewhere like London, where there's VIUs all across the UK. So there's about 25 of them now. And the one in London is I love London. I lived over there for a few years. It's like a thriving city. There's so much happening. There's so many people. But I've also known that there's been some real poverty over particularly in a lot of the projects over there and those places. And to be able to go out into those places and see lived experience and youth work and police and youth justice services and everybody working together in a really collective way, and really place-based. So actually working together on the front line where the issues are and really elevating the voice of young people as part of that. It was just gold. It was magic. And their VIU is only about 6 years old, so it's a lot younger. And they've already made really big change in the city of London in that time, which is for a city that is that evolved with that many people. It just gave me so much hope to think about where we can be.
That's beautiful.
In some of those programs that they had in the VIU in Scotland and in London, did you come across any and say, hey, that is really suited to what we could do with the problem in Melbourne?
Victorian context,
Yep. There was a couple. One of the really big ones, to go back to the idea of kind of being out in the projects, they call it Mayans, and it's Mayans program. And what that program does, it really focuses in on locations where it's not just about high crime, it's about high vulnerability, right? Because those two things go in hand, and disadvantage. And the Mayans program, which is really one of the signature programs of the London VRU, focuses in on saying, rather than like organisations competing for funding, we need to bring organisations together, and we need young people to actually lead the conversation around what the needs are. And therefore, the organisations are all connected up in a consortium rather than competing for funding. So they're doing it together. So it's a whole community that they're creating through the work. So that Mayans project is incredible. And it's focused so that it's not the same. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's grassroots. It's ground up. And for me, being able to walk from one of the services where we met a young man who had, who'd lost his brother to knife crime, and he'd become an incredible mentor in that community. And to walk from one service provider to the other service provider where we sat down together, and for him to tell me that 5 years ago he couldn't have walked across that particular location because it would have covered off the area that two gangs existed in. And it was really only 2 blocks. There's such concentrated living in London. And to be able to see the power of that, and then sit down in a room where he had equal power to the police that were in the room, equal power to the big service providers that were in the room. For me, that was just like, how can we translate that here? That's where we need to go. So I think it is translatable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that one's translatable, it's so powerful, but also it's just common sense. A lot of the time, people that work in different parts of the system, we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
We all want people to thrive. We want people to be safe. But we don't necessarily all pull in the same direction to achieve that. So that was a really powerful thing about the Mayans program. Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. And on the contrary to that, was there anything that in the UK model that maybe wouldn't really fit in the Victorian context because of the communities, the systems, or the culture difference of the two different settings, do you think?
I think probably my reflection on that one is thinking about how we tailor things. So you can't just pick something up and make it work exactly the same, even within different areas of London, within different areas of Glasgow.
Sure.
The way they tailored, that's what I learned. There wasn't anything that I thought just absolutely wouldn't work, but there was a lot that I was really curious to think, well, how could that work here? So another good example is a really powerful program that they do at all the VRUs, and they do in other parts of the world as well through a public health approach, is rather than waiting for people to enter the system, we know there's some real indicators like injury. So young people turning up to accident and emergency with injuries from violence, like those young people might not report those crimes, but they get treatment for those injuries. So why wait until they hit the justice system? Why not intervene there? And that's one where I was really curious to think, well, how could this work for us? And we're investigating that at the moment. Like, how much are we seeing presentations in A&E? Like, how much injury is there where we could actually transfer that model? Would it work for us, or would it be like, oh, maybe that's not relevant for us? So that's like one of the ones that we're considering at the moment. Is that transferable or is it not? I don't know yet. We're still working it through.
What do you guys think? Just before we move on to the next question, I mean, I think that's a really good idea, you know? Someone in, receiving treatment, obviously in a vulnerable state, just come off the back of an incident. Would they be more susceptible to guidance or wisdom on how to prevent that from happening again, or just, you know what I mean? Having someone, let's say in a hospital, right? And offering guidance, offering help. Do you think that would work in Australia or in Melbourne City, Victorian City?
100%. I think sometimes, looking at lived experience is very powerful, and sometimes people just won't get it. It's sad, they won't get it until they're actually in that situation,
That's right.
So getting or hearing the voices or amplifying the voices of those that are there currently, is more powerful, I reckon, than, just a lecturer standing and, educating on not doing the wrong thing. But yeah, so it's very exciting, the VRU model, and one thing that I do like and respect about it is the fact that it's a unifying body kind of, where, it's not a policing body by the sounds of it. It's more, it's more of like a collective engagement where everybody's contributing towards the betterness of our community.
It's like we've all got the same issue. We all want to achieve the same goal. So let's stop competing with each other.
Let's all sit
and
together.
let's bring it together so we can all collectively fix the issue that we're all collectively facing.
It's so nice to hear you guys reflected back that way, because that is exactly what it should be. Like, people that have had these models in their community for years, they said to me, it's not like, we call it a model, and I call it a model because that's what we're used to hearing here. But over there, they call it a movement.
No.
It's different. It's actually, it's like a big paradigm shift. And it's actually saying, let's do things in a different way. So for me, that's one of the big challenges, is getting the message out about doing that thing in a different way. And also knowing that it will take time. We're not going to have all the answers straight away, but it's a movement in that we're all on the journey together.
Absolutely. And just to quickly touch base on what I think about intercepting when young people have injuries due to violent crimes. If you look at lived experience, a lot of the mentors, instantly after they get into a bit of a pickle, that's when they click and instantly their mindset starts shifting. And it's like, hey, okay, I've been doing the wrong thing. I've gotten myself in this position. And it's kind of like a instant shift, and you start thinking, okay, how can I become a solution?
That's
and
right.
intercepting inside, a hospital, for example, I think it's a prime time to actually get them involved. Because imagine after being in
that's when you're
a
reflecting
gruesome
the most.
crime, and you're really badly injured, you're on a hospital bed, and then you start reflecting. Because that's when really the reflecting starts happening. When you're in a pretty ugly predicament.
That's exactly right. And I think you're in that ugly predicament, but you're also seeing your family are seeing you in that way. There's a vulnerability that you're feeling. Like, we've all been teenagers where you feel like 10 foot tall and bulletproof. That's just part of being a teenager. But it's also about knowing that you got to learn on that journey. And some of those moments, they call them over there, they say that's like the reachable moment. Like, that's the moment where you need someone like a lived experience mentor, like a youth worker. And that person, if they can intervene then, and we can put the resources there, then it means young people don't end up having to go through court systems and end up in justice systems. So it's kind of just shifting the dial on where we think about supporting people.
And from what you've seen, with your extensive experience, what would you say are the biggest gaps between systems right now?
So I think there's a thing that the people know really well, I call it the siloing effect, that everybody kind of has their lane, and that's the focus, and everybody is well intended in their lane, but actually what we need to shift is thinking about, this is my lane, this is my patch, and focus more on what are we seeking to achieve here. So that's the big gap for me. And it's not so much of a gap as it's something we need to, if it's a swimming pool, we need to pull those lane ropes out, and we need to understand each other's business. And it's not to say that I want to go off and do your job, but I need to understand your job to be able to do mine well too, and for us to achieve those common aims. So that's one of the big gaps I see. I also think another big gap is really thinking, whether it's in schools, whether it's in hospitals, whether it's actually thinking about the right time to offer help and the right way to offer help. So, lived experience, and you guys have talked about it a bit here tonight, is something I've been hugely passionate about for years. And in Victoria, where Zaid knows, I often say we're going through a renaissance of lived experience. Like, it's the time. It's the time for it. Over there and through the VRU, like, lived experience is a fundamental building block. And that's where I think we need to tap in more to lived experience, not just as mentors to be able to provide support in those moments and be the ones that are having the conversation with young people and saying, hey, like, bro, I know where you're at. Like, I've been there. Let's play some cards. Let's yarn. Let's think this through. There's options. But actually feeding into the way that we do our work and the way we understand the challenges and see the gaps. So I think the gap is actually a big part of it, is where we draw our knowledge systems from and where we design things, the point from which we design things to.
One thing I'll add to that is obviously having the opportunity and the blessing of being able to work with Andrea, I can say that she definitely backs her chat in when she says that she's for lived experience. I remember, I think it was 2024, we did a panel at the MCG where I first met Andrea.
Yeah.
And since then, I always refer to her as a pillar of embracing the lived experience, you know, as a component to the solution, you know. So that's another reason why I say she has a very close spot to us here at Tapped In, is because, you know, I think for a long time some of those voices were not really invited to the table, so to speak, you know. So to see that, you know, change from that to what we're seeing now, and you know, hearing about some of those conversations being held is really an amazing thing to have, you know. So to my next question would be, from your time as the Youth Justice Commissioner, moving through to the head of the VIU, what type of programs or have actually shown strong longer-term impact with some of the young people that we're seeing today?
Yep. So some of the programs that I've seen have had huge impact is obviously we've seen in a very short period of time that lived experience mentoring can have a huge impact. I think one of the things I've learnt with that particular style of programming, though, is you can't just pop on your cap and say, hey, I'm a lived experience mentor, I'm going to help. And so for me, those programs are actually about saying, how do we support people to build the skills and the experience and the know-how and the resilience, because it's hard work, right? And it's extra hard and extra loaded when you've come from an environment where you've had your own experiences with difficult systems and stuff. So I think lived experience to me has been an incredible thing to see it coming through and to think about how we do it in the right way. So that's been a hugely successful one. But then I've also seen huge success in shifting some of the way, for example, that we do our work in custody. So shifting from models that are more correctionally focused, so more like the adult correction system, to being really relationship focused. So relational security is such a big one. We know that the relationships that we have are some of the most powerful things that are able to support us to either make a shift or be resilient or whatever it is. So models that focus on relationships, models that focus on connection to culture. So, you know, helping young people actually feel that connection to culture. Whether you're an Aboriginal young person that maybe hasn't got to know a lot about the background and history of your mob, and that there's programs that are there to be able to support you, that can be a way to find yourself and to build resilience. But also for young people from, you know, every culture is such a huge strength, but just being able to create programs that really honour and respect the importance of connecting with culture, whatever that means for you, because it's different for everybody. So those are some of the really powerful ones. I've also seen there's some really powerful clinical programs, things like multi-systemic therapy, which was one that was brought out to youth justice probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. Though it's a really successful program elsewhere, and for some young people, that is and their families, that's a program they need, because it's really comprehensive, like really wraparound support for a family.
What does that entail?
So multi-systemic therapy is a really high intensity program that supports a whole family. So it's like having someone there 24/7 a day to work not just with a young person where, you know, they might be getting into some strife, but to work with the whole family. So to be able to work with the parents, to support them, to be able to work with, you know, the siblings and the whole family system. And so that person is available to that family 24/7, basically. So rather than a lot of models are 9 to 5, multi-systemic therapy says that we actually have to be there. Crises don't happen 9 to 5. Like we need to be there all the time. But it also is really focused on building skills. So, you know, we all had to learn to ride a bike. There's not a manual that comes with parenting. So it's actually about working with the family where they're at. So that's a powerful
I always say with mentoring as well, I always bring up, when you have an hour or 2 hours or even maybe 3 hour session with a mentee, I always say the most important part is what the young person does when you leave. Because it can be all sunshine, rainbows and lollipops when you're there and everything's going smooth sailing. But the moment you leave, I feel like it's the most important.
Yep.
Because that person's by themselves. They've got access to things that may lead them to reoffending.
Yep.
They've got access. So it's not. So I completely understand how that would work.
And the family support too. Like,
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
give them $100 million worth of a game, but if they're still lacking parts in the family that need support, you can't rely on that 1 hour you had. You know? And that's why the family support is a bad idea.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's right.
Stands out.
That's right. And the thing that's common with all of these successful interventions is relationships. Like relationships are the core, right? One strong person that can guide you in the right way, that's gold. That's as close as you come to a magic wand. Sometimes that person is a mentor. Sometimes that person is a coach. Sometimes that person, is another family member. That's sometimes there's someone like from an MST team who's there for people in that moment. Like that's what it takes, and that's kind of the common ingredient.
Even a floor staff, with the right connection to a young person. I've heard plenty of
That's
times
right.
people credit those staff members that, they showed care and genuineness through their relationship building, and that was enough to set
That's
them on
right.
their way to explore other alternatives.
Yeah, and just on that, what do you guys all reckon in terms of how much of this comes down to environment versus individual choice?
A lot, I'd say. I'm happy to hear from what you guys think, but I think a lot comes from falling victim to your environment or circumstances. Yeah.
I always use the example of a bottle of water. You go to a convenience shop in the city and it costs about $3.50. But if you're on an international airplane going to a completely different country, then the value of that water bottle is probably $7.50. So when you take a young person out of an environment, I've seen personally a lot of the times, the internal character shows and they thrive when they're completely taken out of that environment, So definitely that environmental factor is a massive one.
Or even if they're not taken out, maybe if the condition of the environment is shifted, supported, or managed, then they can still bring out the internal.
I feel like even with like habits, like let's just say I'm just going to use smoking for an example. If someone's really eager to quit smoking, but they have a bunch of friends that smoke, if that person's taken out of that environment, the urge wouldn't be that empowering, it wouldn't be that powerful for them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the urge might be will still be there, but I reckon you're right.
On a much lower
In the
scale.
sense of the environment, it's like you're seeing other people do it. It brings back, sparks something in your brain where it's like, I want it now, because you're around it or you're exposed to it. Yeah, for sure.
And I also think when it comes to environment, like all of us, we all remember being teenagers. Environment, your friends, your peers, are everything. Like, psychologists, philosophers since, Greek times have been saying that.
Yeah.
That's just a universal truth that when you're a teenager, like environment and your peers as part of that environment are so impactful. And that's different at different times. When you're in primary school, really, really focused on your parents and your family and your guidance and, that you're much more malleable to that guidance. When you get beyond those teenage years, once you hit your own 20s, sort of, you're looking at your own family, but there's that time when there's that real vulnerability to environment. Yeah.
That's a really good point. So we'll move on to now some of the exciting things coming out of the VIU. So I want to touch base on the Youth Impact Collective. So first thing we'll ask is, what is it? And we have some other questions lined up, but just for those who are watching who may want to get involved in being a part of this amazing VIU movement, let's go with.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's hear about the Youth Impact Collective.
Yeah, so the Youth Impact Collective is really focusing in on the importance of relationships and lived experience. That the VIU model relies on relationships and insight that comes from young people, because let's face it, like if there's a problem you want to fix, the people that are closest to the problem are going to be best to answer the problem and come up with the solutions. And we know by empowering youth voice all around the world, evidence shows us that only good things can come from that. So the Youth Impact Collective, it's really like a leadership function. So it's not just a consulting group. If young people put their hand up to be part of the Youth Impact Collective and join the Youth Impact Collective, then they'll be paid employees effectively of the VRU, and they will have a role in shaping the way that we work, having conversations like we're having now around what do we think the gaps are, what's missing. We're going to introduce this intervention. We think this is a good idea. What do you think about it? But it will also be about the VRU investing in young people, investing in lived experience, investing in the voice of young people by providing, training and leadership and opportunities to be able to be at the table, as you said, Zaid. I think that's the key to the Youth Impact Collective. It's the table, and the Youth Impact Collective will also be coupled with the Violence Prevention Partnership Collective, which will be a bunch of adults that have got specialised knowledge or skills or experience that will also help shape the VRU's priorities and the way we do our work. So together, those two voices around the table will be really powerful.
That's amazing. And for the viewers watching who want to get involved, is there a certain age bracket you're going for? Is there can boys and girls get involved? So what are some of those things that we can...
Definitely. So boys, girls, 14 to 25 is the age group that we're targeting.
Yep.
It is a paid opportunity, as I said, and what we're saying is the commitment, like the number of hours, will vary greatly, but there'll definitely be some contact, I would say most weeks of the year, and up to about 10 hours a month. Yeah.
For those watching, where can they sign up or where can they jump on this exciting opportunity?
So we've actually just launched it in the last day. So we will make sure there's a QR code that can pop up, hopefully on screen. I don't know if we've got that kind of capability, but
make that work.
Let's make that happen. QR code apply here. Yeah. There's also going to be some info sessions. So next week, next Tuesday, next Friday, there's going to be some information sessions. So people can pop along and hear a bit more from myself and some others in the team about the collective.
So we'll put all those links in the bottom as well. But one thing I do want to say is a lot of the time in community, we feel like, how come we're not getting a voice at the table, and why can't we bring certain things to light? So the thing that stands out, with what's been said here is you are being invited by Andrea to come to have your say, and to share what you think might need a bit of help and assistance in some of the problems that we face. Yeah, exactly. So we don't want to hear after this, well, where's our invitation? This is the invitation you guys are getting to bring forward some of the solutions that you think that we have to some of the problems that we see. So
part of that solution for sure. Yeah. Very important.
What do you think would separate someone who's ready for that level of leadership versus someone who may just be involved in lived experience or living experience? Do you think it's some sort of requirement, or do you think it's open to all?
It's really open to all. I think what I would say to people would be helpful to think about is, is this for me? Are you ready to lean into those conversations around solutions? So of course we've got to understand the problem and unpack the problems, but also the solutions. So being courageous, being willing to kind of sit around the table and not always feel comfortable, because when we're making big changes, like, it can be uncomfortable, right? So I think that the key thing to ask yourself is, A, can I commit the time? Because we want people that are really committed. And then B, am I up for the experience? Everything else we'll teach you. We'll work with you, not so much teach you. You're going to teach us a lot, but we'll work with you. We'll support you through that. And we have partnership with organisations like YACVIC, which is really important, the Youth Affairs Council of Victoria. They'll provide some scaffolding and some support around how we make sure young people are equipped with the skills to do that work in the way that they'll feel really empowered as well. Yeah.
So if you guys know anyone too, let's put the word out.
Definitely.
Guess from last week might be a really good one for that too. To get them involved. Yeah. That's really nice.
What do you reckon Victoria's lacking in now, and what we're actually ahead in at doing really well, with your experience?
What we're lacking in is a long-term approach, and that's where I think the VRU and that public health approach, which says that to make changes to big problems, you have to look at the data, you have to look at the evidence, you have to look at solutions that are going to work, but also you have to have patience and courage to hold the course, because these things take time. So I think the thing that I'm hoping the VRU can kind of offer, which I think is a bit of a gap, is that framework for everyone to get on the same page in doing that. So I think that's one thing that we have been lacking. I think also we've been lacking visibility on the good news stories. So that's one thing I'm really committed to as well in this role, and that I learnt from overseas, is you've got to tell the stories. Because at the moment, you know, in the mainstream media, it's flooded with the terrible stories, the bad stories as people see it. So being able to really lean into, hey, let's tell the good stories, like let's put those alternative stories out there, so that they can see the light of day and people can see it's the broader population can see it's a much bigger picture than what people think it looks like on face value. So that opportunity to really humanize the space here is in the media, and the mainstream media, I think is really important.
Also, I feel like a lot of viewers of the mainstream media, when they see something as a big problem like that, they want an instant fix.
Yep.
And maybe they can't understand that something like the VRU will definitely take time, but it will have massive tangible changes.
That's right. There's like no one policy or program that's ever going to be able to fix things. And that's what I love about the VRU model, is it's not saying it's about a single policy or program. It's about bringing a range of policies and programs in, because it's not one size fits all.
So,
You know, some people like soccer, some people like basketball, some people like soccer. Like it's not one size fits all. So we shouldn't try and fit a square peg into a round hole. We have to understand all the different ways in which we can fix the problem. Yeah.
I've got a personal question. So, you know, listening to you and having this conversation tonight, I hear, you know, inclusion, collaboration, very solution-based and grassroots-based. But my question is, after all these years, Andrea, like, where do you sort of get this motivation from to just keep going and to keep working towards the solution? Because obviously it's not easy.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like it's an easy job or anything by no means, you know. So
I just think I'm relentless. Like that's just at the core of who I am. I've come from a family that's really persistent. My grandmother in particular, and I think having great heroes that have taught you to never give up, and to always lean in. For me, that's what I'm thriving when I'm in that space. So that's my happy space is leaning into that. And then I also, I keep my cup full by doing things that bring me great joy, and particularly being out in the natural world and in the water and surfing and fishing and just that, all of that. I know what makes me feel alive. So, the work and the intensity of the work can get to me sometimes, but I know how to top my cup up and be really intentional about that. So, and the outcomes, and if I'm really, really, really honest, Zaid, it's seeing the success of people like you and seeing the success of the lived experience sector as a whole. Like that for me is the best gift and payback you can get for leaning in that way. So genuinely.
There's a reason why, you know, she's the one who's been trusted to run the VRU, you know, someone who understands, you know, to maintain that relentlessness. And like I said, it's not an easy position to be in, I feel like, you know, so that's why I think Tapped In wants to give you your flowers and just say, you know, keep being that forever relentless person that you are, because, you know, we need you in the field. And for me, myself, I wouldn't be in the position I am if you didn't play your part, you know, so.
So shout out to you, exactly. Yeah, like you said, that relentlessness is what we need. You know, not everybody can tackle this role that you're in. So, you know, we are sort of backing you. We are here to support you in any way we can.
100%.
And, you know, we wish you nothing but success. And yeah, this journey is not going to be easy, but I think it's going to be a fruitful one, definitely. So I think just the message to everyone out there is just to, you know, tap in. This is exciting times, and I think it's the time where, you know, we can all collectively jump in on the solutions rather than, you know, looking at the problems and complaining about it. Yeah.
I want to ask. So, you know, London is 5 years into their violence reduction unit. So for Victoria, you know, we've started the commencement. So where do you think we could, or what do you think we can expect to see, you know, in 5 years down the track from now, once we've got the violence reduction unit in place and things are actually happening off the ground?
Yeah.
What would you like to see, better yet, you know, in Victoria or in Melbourne?
I like to see young people thriving, society understanding the problems for what they are, and people understanding that prevention is everybody's business. You know, it's literally everybody in society's business. We all have a part to play. In terms of outcomes, I really want to get there quicker than London got there. So that's just quietly, you know, that's the fire in my belly. But I also know that changing big systems and challenges take time. So for me, I'm constantly trying to balance out that want for things to be changed now, and really like throwing our collective selves into that will be important. But in 5 years' time, I want to see that there's big shifts. I want to see that young people that do find themselves in the system are also getting the right interventions to help them find themselves find their way out. Because that's also prevention work. If we get things right for young people when they come into the youth justice system, then that means that, you know, they're not going to potentially go on to the adult system. That's going to not only save them, but save like literally dollars. It's going to save harm. It's going to save a whole range of things. So I think being able to measure that's the big challenge now that my team's really looking at, is how do we measure success? Because success isn't just about crime statistics. Like, I think people can get really caught up in that.
Yeah, and what does it look like beyond, you know, looking at crime statistics? What does success actually look like?
So it looks like young people staying in school. It looks like young people not being injured. It looks like, you know, a reduction. It looks like, sadly, I say this in all seriousness, it means less funerals. It means less harm. It means less beef between young people. It means thriving as well. It's not just what is not happening, it's what is happening. So it's young people thriving. It's young people having opportunities to get into jobs, to get careers, no matter where they're from, no matter who they are, that they know what those opportunities are. Yeah.
That's a fact, because I always say we have enough of our community that, and when I say our community, it's everything. It's the demographic, it's where we live as well, parts of Melbourne, Australia as a whole, you know. We all see people who go through the system of the justice system, you know. But what we also want to start seeing is now we want to see the superstars in all fields, you know, in politics, in athletics, in entrepreneurs, in education, as Andrea said as well. So I think we're at a mutual hope for what we can see from the VRU, you know, and whatever Tapped In can do as a team as well to work towards that, because I do like the idea of collaborating, and by the end we all want the same thing. We all want to see a better future for our leaders of tomorrow, and whatever that looks like, I think, you know, committed to the mission without a doubt.
100%. And the biggest and the most saddest one is the funerals that you mentioned, you know, like there's so much talent, like, you know, and going at such a young age, it's sad to see, because it's like so much, you know, untapped potential. So yeah, enough's enough, honestly.
We'll go around and ask some other questions, but I just want to ask one question, which is, you know, a lot of people who might be watching this, maybe some of the young people who are facing challenging times, they might be in a bit of a situation where we're not 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So what would you say to someone who feels like, you know, they're stuck in a certain situation, they're looking for advice, they're probably watching the video? What's some advice you can give them, or they could take away from, you know, from the collective conversation?
I think the biggest piece of advice is to say that you can dream and you can be what you dream to be. And there are people there that love you and that want to support you, and have that conversation. Tell someone that you know is in your corner how you're feeling, like where you're at. Because in those turning points, in those moments, I think young people can feel, young people feel really alone. and like they don't have choices. There are choices, even sometimes if it doesn't feel like there is, and there is always someone in your corner. I think sometimes young people wonder whether people are in their corner. Test it out. You'll soon know. Like, reach out. There's so many opportunities, whether it's, you know, joining a sports club, whether it's talking to a teacher, whether it's talking to a youth worker, a friend, an uncle, an aunt. You know, it can feel really lonely in adolescence. Like, I remember that feeling, but there is always people in your corner. Yep. And do you know what? The other big one is we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't think just because you've gone down a certain path that you can't ever turn back. You can always turn back.
Yeah. And I like what you said there, 100%. I think the most important one that you mentioned is that isolation piece, you know?
Yeah.
When you're in that moment, isolation is when the biggest damage can occur as well. So steering away from that, understanding that, you know, it's easier said, but like understanding that there is always someone in your corner, you know, whether it's searching for that person if you can't see them right in front of you, you know. And there's a lot of opportunities out there. It just might require a bit more research or, you know, but there's always, and what you said, the biggest one, I think the biggest takeaway for me as well was just testing it, you know, just going out there and surrounding yourself with positive people or people that you aspire to be or people that you know can help you that generally care, you know, because there's a lot of that out there for sure. What about you? What do you reckon?
I think, it's a very tricky one, you know. In the moment, you know, you feel like you've only got a fair few options, you know. You end up limited to what you approach, or what you lean on, you know. We do have support systems, but oftentimes we don't want to lean on them, whether it's because of, you know, barriers between, you know, not wanting to open up or being seen as in a certain light of
Feeling shame.
yeah, ashamed or vulnerability or whatever. But I can speak from my own personal experiences, is that the only time things actually ever worked and I was actually able to turn things around for myself was when I let go of all the pride and arrogance to not reach out to my supports, you know. Let them know what's actually happening. If you've got something on your mind or you're going through a particular phase in life that you don't see the end of the tunnel, as Andrea said, lean on those supports and just be open and be transparent, you know. And you will be. I can definitely say you'll be surprised if you have the ability to maintain that patience, that you will see the other side of it, you know. But you'll never know unless you maintain, you know, throughout. I guess I'd say, you know.
Absolutely. I think for me, personally, it's coming to the point where you build yourself up to a level of courage where you remove the mental, imaginary barriers that you've got in your head. You know, and that can come from so many different directions, you know, whether it's your upbringing, whether it's your environment, whether it's the mistakes, like you said, you made before. I remember seeing a experiment that they did on ants or spiders, and they drew circles around them just with a pencil. So they had a spider or an ant, some type of insect, on a piece of paper, and they would draw circles with a biro around it. And the ant or the spider would literally feel like it's stuck in that circle, even though it's just a drawing.
That mental barrier is there.
And it'd keep trying to go that direction and the other direction and that direction until it came to a point where it stepped over it. And once it had stepped over it, the person who was drawing would keep doing other ones. And it just keep going through them because they've overcome. The animals, the insects overcome its mental barriers, you know.
Powerful. I want to go back to lived experience in this, you know, in this movement. How do we ensure that lived experience isn't tokenistic, you know, but it's actually shaping decisions?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's where, you know, particularly in systems like London, what I saw there was a really mature system around how it ensured that there were safeguards in place to be able to ensure that lived experience was recognised, respected, genuinely at the table, but also not that this happens intentionally, but sometimes lived experience can be taken advantage of without people intentionally doing it. So I learned a lot over there in terms of some of the playbook around that, and I think we need to think long and hard with anything that we do around lived experience, around how we ensure it's not tokenistic. I don't have all the answers to that one, because I feel like that's like the next chapter in this renaissance, is saying, all right, we know this is an incredibly powerful thing, but there's also huge vulnerability that goes with it. You know, you have to turn up with your whole self when you're working in the lived experience space. You don't get to walk that back. But at the same time, the power is you can connect in a way that nobody else can. You can have conversations and contribute to understanding in a way that no one else can. But I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers to that one, because I think that's part of what, with the Youth Impact Collective as an example, that's one of the first questions that I have, is how do we make this right? How do we make it safe? Like, what's the playbook? And I'm really keen to make sure that we connect that conversation up with what's happening in places like London, not because it's identical, but because I think we can learn from them, and learn how they put those safeguards in place.
And it's very hard to have all the answers, honestly, because like in this phase, it's everything, like it's sort of in a trial phase, if you look at it, you know, where you have to test things to actually get that understanding, get that data, and analyze it to see what's working, what's not, and, you know, drop and implement as you go. So looking at VIU right now, what would you say, what phase, if you were to categorize it into a phase, what phase would you say that we're currently in?
We are very much in establishment phase, which is, I often say, we're building the plane as we fly it, because we're not waiting for it to all be built and looking right and, you know, checks and balances in place, because we can't wait. The challenges and getting to the solutions is too urgent. So we're in that initiation, that building stage, but we're also moving at the same time. Another great saying is, like, we're walking and chewing gum. We're not just sitting here like noodling away at what might this lovely thing look like. We're moving. We are moving, and we are moving now. So that's very much where we're at. And that stage is, to say to people, it's like so exciting and terrifying often in the same moment. So I think there's a vulnerability in the stage that we're at the moment, but there's huge excitement as well, which is why doing it in a really connected up way is so important. So we've got lots of voices in the room, and we're not always going to get it right. The other thing about this stage, and I think I learnt this a lot from talking to people who were bold. The woman that's Karen McCluskey, who set up the Scottish VRU, she just said, one of the biggest pieces of advice she gave me is, you're going to make mistakes and be unashamed about that, because you can't sit around and do nothing. You have to do something. So that's very much the stage that we're at, is about being really considered in what we do, but also being bold and courageous and saying we're prepared to make mistakes.
No, and that's the beauty of it, because you know, we can sit down and plan for decades and still get it wrong, you know, but having that ball rolling, getting that momentum going, I think is very important, and it's the most exciting time. So we're all, I think, very excited to see where this leads. For sure.
100%. I think for the first time ever, and I could be wrong, but everyone's playing a part, you know. Lived experience, 100%, but also there's so many other factors, you know, that are different pieces to the puzzle. And but if we use them all, the communication, the relationship building, the professionals, even police, to be honest. But if everyone plays their part, and then you get a full puzzle, now we're getting closer to the solution. No one's going to feel like they haven't had a say or have brought some value to the conversation. And that's what I'm the most excited about, you know. For once, we're going to see full collaboration from all angles. And you know,
everyone playing a part in being solution-oriented.
That's right.
It's cool, man.
I think what I love about it is there's no competition. There's more collaboration, which there will definitely be intense results.
Is there anything that you think you might have said to let's go with teenage Andrea, going back to, you know, your younger self, and seeing yourself now leading what I'd say is one of the most peace-driven solutions to some of the things we're seeing today, the most collaborative, the most grassroots as well as professional and whatnot. Did you ever see yourself sort of finding to be in this position as the CEO of the VRU? And, you know, if you didn't, what do you think you could look back and say to your younger self, looking at yourself now and doing such amazing things for the people, you know?
It's such a great question. I was just picturing my teenage self then. I was just going back to some of those kind of awkward spaces. And there is no way known that this is where I thought I was going. I couldn't have imagined it in a million years. But I do think some of those experiences for me as a teenager, some of the challenges that I had certainly shaped the way that I understand like what it is, that essence that everyone goes through as a teenager, some of those challenges. So I think the advice I would give myself probably back then is the same advice that I give to most teenagers. Like, back yourself, believe in yourself. This is a phase of your life. It's not your life. It's a phase of your life. And dream big, because I think also that dreaming should never stop, because I could honestly say to you that the me of 10 years ago I wouldn't have believed was here. And I was certainly a lot older than a teenager then. So it's also about just roll with it as well. When opportunities come up, just roll with it and know that things will be okay. They will be. Just look for those people that can be in your corner. Yeah.
That's sound advice, definitely. Yeah, because having that mindset where things in life happened not to you but for you, and just going with the flow and understanding that life is in phases, and just enjoying and being present is something that I think we're all guilty of. Sometimes we're all focused on the future and looking in the future that we forget the current, which is the present, and then just being in that moment for sure. And just on that, if you could, so for the people listening, could you, if you could shift their mindset about violence, what's something that you would generally that would generally change outcomes? Like, what would it be?
I think it would be understanding that, generally speaking, almost all the time, someone that perpetrates violence has been a victim first. I think that's one of the biggest things that I'd say. And when I say victim, that's a very broad term in the way that violence is too. So I think for me, that's one of the things that society, with a lot of the dehumanizing that can happen, that's what they forget, is that it's like you're either a victim or you're a perpetrator. Like that's not the case. And I think I feel it's a real mission to the world at large through the VRU to understand that, but also to understand that things like racism are also violence. If you look at how the World Health Organization classifies violence, it's not just interpersonal violence. Violence is such a broad concept. Violence is actual or perceived violence, threats between people, between groups of people. Violence also includes violence towards oneself. And so it's understanding that it's a far broader concept to what is this common thing we call violence. So that's something that I think needs to be understood a bit more. And it's connected when people say to me, why are you called the Violence Reduction Unit? Shouldn't you be called the Crime Prevention Unit? It's like, well, no, because it's actually about a lot more. This concept, what we're trying to deal with, is a lot broader than crime. It's, if we get this right, we're addressing a whole heap of those other sort of components of what violence is. So I'd really like to be able to kind of shift the dial on people's understanding around that. Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing to hear, and I have no doubt that, we'll get to where we need to get to as a community, and for those who might have missed as well, there's been some very recent partnerships with the VRU, Think Village and 16 Yards, and even Tapped In backing this initiative, because we want to see the change, and without a shadow of doubt in my mind, I think we'll be able to get to that, So from us to you, Andrea, I just want to make sure if you can take anything away from us, is that, I think we're well on track, and with the right things in place, I hope to see, the right kind of changes and whatnot. And yeah, excited for what's to come. Anyone want to do a wrap on?
Nah, you hit the nail on that one, man. I think it's gift time.
Yeah, it's a gift, yeah. So, Andrea, I will tell you, you are very tapped into the community, no pun intended. You're tapped in for the people. I've seen it with my own eyes. People have witnessed it, have felt the effects of it. So you know, us here at Tapped In have put together a gift for you, just as a reminder that you will be backed by us and by the people. So without any further ado,
Yes, sir. Welcome to Tapped In.
That's great. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. So thank you so much, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you guys. I was a bit nervous. It's the first podcast that I've done, so
Wow.
thank you for
that's an honor.
That's an honor and a privilege.
thank you for the experience.
Yeah.
Not a bother at all. And I think it's not the last time we'll be seeing you
Yeah.
on these blue couches.
I hope we didn't
Yeah.
scare you away with you know some of the questions.
Yeah, I'll be back for sure.
Beautiful, beautiful.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will put some of the youth initiative links in the bottom, the QR codes. If you do want to get involved, click any of the links or even reach out to us. We'll point you in the right direction. But yeah, do take away from some of the things we spoke in this conversation. And yeah.
And I just want to end it with this, you know, there's no I in team. You know, we got to all work together. So just keep that in mind. Don't expect the next person to pick this up. You know, we should all be jumping in collectively and helping one another for a better future.
And lastly, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Yes,
Tapped
sir.
in is tapping out.
Tapping out.
Like, comment, subscribe. See you later.